first guest is the founder of the theatre and the landowner of the property you're sitting on today. Would you join me in welcoming Robert Winslow? Is that your fancy top hat or your everyday top hat?
No, it's for the show.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me? Is that good enough?
Yeah. Yeah, can everybody hear?
We're doing a fight call right after this, so I have to wear this in the fight call. So
it's jaunty. I like it.
Yeah, maybe a new look. I don't know.
Try it on. I don't mind it at all. Thanks for joining me, Rob.
Yeah.
So would you just tell us quickly, before we jump into your play, which you're the writer of the Cavan Blazers, which everyone has seen tonight, tell us a bit about this property and your history and the history of this property and your family.
What I know.
Yeah, well, I know you know most things.
Yeah, no. You never know how much you really know. Like, stories get passed on, but you never know how true they were. So, to the best of my ability, my great-great-grandfather came here in the 1840s. I had heard somewhere through the family that he was a teacher of some kind. And he came from near Enniskillen in Fermanagh County, Ireland. I don't believe he had a great amount of skill in farming, and he was a younger son, so he didn't inherit the property in Ireland, so he came here with his wife. Stories were that they used to go to balls in Millbrook, that he had hunting dogs, that he was living a kind of life of a gentry kind of person.
Like the Lord of the Manor kind of thing?
Something like that, but there was a real disconnect between the lifestyle they wanted to live and the actual money they had and what they were actually doing. Susanna Moody's story is kind of like that with her husband, and the trails as well. That these people came and they found out pretty quickly it was pretty difficult to farm and clear the land and stuff. So as far as I know, that was George. He had many children. His oldest children's name was Blaney, who lived here for a while, as far as I know, and had some kind of a thing around drinking. I don't know whether he had trouble with drinking or whether he actually manufactured alcohol. I can't really tell.
Okay.
Anyway, somehow the farm passed to his younger brother Charles Herbert, who was a kind of a soldier character. He was involved in the 1866 Fenian Rebellion. He was involved in the 1885 Riel Rebellion. In fact, he led a contingent of soldiers from this community out west in 1885 under the leadership of Colonel Arthur Trefusage Heneage Williams from Port Hope.
It's a big name.
It is a big name. There's streets in Port Hope named after him. And that was interesting because it was the soldiers under his command that took a Blessed Catholic Church bell from a community out west during that conflict. And it came to Millbrook, and it stayed in Millbrook despite the attempt of the Catholic Church and the government to get it out of Millbrook from 1885 until about 1991, when a group of Métis people came here to the local legion, and then the bell was taken back. That bell was only revealed a few years ago, so that's another kind of sideline.
And we've done a play about that and about your relative Charles Winslow and the Belle of Batoche.
That's right.
And all that. This is you're.
You see, you asked me a question.
No.
It never ends.
No, it's good. So this is 100 acres. This property.
It was they call it a long 100 because it's 7/8 of a mile long. Fortunately, or unfortunately, but I think fortunately, at the back of our farm is an unassumed road allowance, so there's no actual road at the back.
Yeah.
So it makes the back very kind of remote and beautiful.
And we've done a show back there, a couple shows, right? We did the Moody Trail, about Susanna Moody Catholic Trail, and then we did 1837, the Farmer's Revolt, at the very, almost at the back. How much further does the property go beyond where we have that cabin?
Maybe a few hundred yards.
Right, okay, yeah.
We also owned two farms from here. It was 100 acres when I was a kid. My dad sold that 100 acres in 1968 for $10,000.
Oh man, if you had it today. Well, I mean, I know.
Then my mom's people came from Muskoka, and the land that they left would now be worth millions and millions, but back then it wasn't.
Right. And so, your family, Blaney, one of them lost it, and then, was it your grandfather who got it back?
No, it was Charles, remember him, the Belle of Batoche?
Oh, Belle of Batoche, okay.
His son Arthur, who fought in the First World War, got the farm. And somehow my grandfather, who was Blaney's son, Fred, must have wanted the farm back, so he was able to buy it from Arthur at the end of the First World War. And my grandfather, Fred, and my father, Lawrence, finally paid the farm off in the mid-1930s. I've seen all the old mortgage payments and how they worked here. And they were dirt poor. I mean, my grandfather, Fred, and my grandmother, Fanny, and then my dad, being here as an only child, they had nothing really. The house was not even painted. It was, it was quite a difference from the first group that came in 1840.
They weren't putting on airs, your grandparents and your mom and
No,
dad?
and then my mom met my dad. That's a fun story too. Mr. Fair's here, a teacher from my public school days, and he knew my parents, Gene and Lawrence. My dad's cousin Harold Lund, where he was boarding and working on a farm in Fraserville, my mom was the youngest daughter there, and my dad was complaining because there weren't any good women around. This is in the late 1930s. So Harold said, well, I know somebody where I am that works hard. She pitches hay and she milks the cows and she does all the heavy work in the farm, so you should meet her.
And that's your mom, Jean, right? Was
That's
she the
my
youngest
mom,
of
Jean.
6?
She was the youngest of 6.
Wow.
So my dad went down there like the next weekend. And they started going out, and they were married on September 30th, 1944. And Harold, who introduced them, had been engaged when he introduced them, and they even married before he married.
Oh, wow. Your dad wasn't wasting any time.
No,
once
he wasn't.
Saw your mom. And your mom was, she was a huge contributor here, right?
Oh, like right here with the barns, and there was a barn there as well that's gone. And I have such an image of her walking out of that barn with 2 pails of milk and all the animals, the dogs and the cats and the calves all running around her and stuff. She was, we had market gardening, so all those fields were like beans and cabbage and carrots and corn and stuff like that, as well as over there. And again, she just...
Yeah, what's that story? Your mom could just go down with her hands and pick up handfuls?
Yeah, a bunch of beans, and she'd fill a basket in about 2 seconds. Yeah.
There's also good stories from you in that time, because you were quite a hippie, as I think it's okay to say that because your hair's long for this play right now, but you would wear a big muumuu and listen to Anagata Davida working out, hoeing in the field. That's the rumors from the other kids from this area.
Yeah, I had a little transistor radio. I don't know if you know what it's like to stand in the field all day and hoe cabbage. It's not the most captivating thing you can do. So a little transistor really helps. And you gotta admit, that's 65, 66, 67, 68, 69. Think of the songs you could listen to then.
Yeah, no, I know, it's great. I'm curious, because I think Lindy was talking to Mr. Fair, your teacher, and from as young as 6 years old, you were writing stories, and then he remembers you talking about the story of the Cavan Blazers. I talked to someone a few months ago who remembers being on the bus with you in 1978, going to Trent University, and you were talking about the Cavan Blazers. Do you remember hearing the story, or what you knew about the story of the Cavan Blazers?
No, it was just little details like our neighbors, the mites. One of their kids was going out with a Catholic or something, and it was this massive deal. Like, oh my God, they can't go out with a Catholic. And I didn't know what that was all about. One of the popes died in the mid-70s, and the caretaker at the hall in Millbrook, the municipal hall, wouldn't lower the flag. I remember that. But the big story really was the 1977 or 8 group of monks from Oka, Quebec, wanting to buy land in Cavan to build a monastery and sell cheese. And the way they blocked it was they wouldn't rezone property for them, which was a euphemism for "we don't want you here." And the local reeve of the time was quoted as saying, "We Catholics and Protestants can live together. We'll live together over here, and you'll live together over there."
Right.
And that quote got into the Toronto Sun, and I think there was even a human rights hearing.
Right.
That
Now,
time.
so you were raised here, and your people are Protestant from Ireland,
Yeah,
yes?
I found out when I was doing my research in the early 80s that my great-grandfather, Winslow, was an Orangeman on LOL 40 on the Fallis line. My mom's dad, up in Muskoka before they came here, he was an Orangeman as well. In fact, the story is he moved from Muskoka to Fraserville because he had ordered some mail order underwear, and he thought Catholics had taken it out of the package and hung it on his mailbox. Anyway,
Okay.
the stories you hear. Right?
Was your dad an Orangeman?
No, he was an odd fellow in many ways. The Independent Order of Odd Fellows. I mean, that was a.
They use the basement of the Masonic Temple.
Okay,
in
they're still
Millbrook.
around.
Yeah, they are. Odd Fellows are around. So do you remember when you first started to sort of write or research the piece?
Yeah, really, I started in earnest researching it around 1980, 81. Started with a bang with a trip to Ireland. And that was the year of the hunger strike with Bobby Sands
yeah.
and the different people that in Belfast in prison that stopped eating. And several of them eventually died.
So we were there right in the middle of the Troubles.
Yeah, and I stayed with a lady who was a neighbor's aunt or something. And she lived in the Shankill Road in Belfast, which is the Protestant road, and then running parallel to that is the Falls Road, which is the Catholic road, and there's barriers between the roads. And she was funny, this whole elderly lady. She said, it's this nothing, the Troubles is nothing. He said, it was worse during the Second World War. I had to hide there, because they were bombing Belfast
right.
for the shipbuilding and stuff. But it was very tense. I felt very nervous there for sure. I mean, the house was right on the street, and every time somebody walked by, I kind of, somebody going to throw a bomb at me. It's certainly the border areas where my people were from in County Fermanagh. They called it cowboy country because the IRA were like bombing houses to get the population back from the border so that it was easier to take guns back and forth. And I interviewed one lady in the border between Fermanagh and County Cavan who, was pulled out of her house in the middle of the night and threatened to be killed, and then they, destroyed her house. And there were lots of stories like that. And yeah, I talked to different people who had family members killed and that sort of thing.
Dara, who's a young lad in this play, his mom's family is from Tullamore, which I think is in that same border area, but came here in the 1850s. What was the first scene in the play that folks are going to see tonight, or did it even make it into that you remember writing?
It could have been Count Your Chickens because I won't tell you too much about the scene, but it was a story that came. Well, one of the beautiful things about working on this play when I was first researching it was interviewing old-timers and hearing some of these stories. And I'd heard this particular story about this bar in Ida, which is a little hamlet north of Millbrook, north of 115, about this trick that the Blazers played on the tavern keeper.
Yeah, we won't say anything more about it, but that's great. So, and how much research? So did you do research in Ireland, or did you soak it in Ireland, or did you do research here? Because I know you love the archives of the day.
I did research everywhere. I mean, I was in all sorts of. I worked in the Linen Hall Library in Belfast. I worked in Trinity College in Dublin. I went to the area where the Blazer families that came here were from, south of Dublin, County Wexford, where the rebellion of 1798 had raged near a town called Enniscorthy. And there were, the Swains, the Grandys, the Rutherfords, the Coes, they were all from that place, and they came here. In fact, the other day we went to that cemetery in the Morton Line, and that Hannah Swain, the matriarch of the Blazers, she was born in 1763.
Yeah.
Came here as a widow with her sons, and then it was the grandson who was the head of the Blazers. But
we think we found his grave, right? Robert Swain.
Robert Swain.
No, nicknamed Dane Swain.
Nicknamed the Dane, I think, because of the color of his hair. It was light colored and some kind of connection to Scandinavia.
Oh, okay, right. And so you've taken the story of the Cavan Blazers, so it's a real story, right? How much of it is real?
There was a man named Patrick McGuire. He did try to establish a Catholic community here and get a church here. That's documented. I can show you a petition from 1825 to the government signed by many Catholic residents asking for land to build a church. I know that the Blazers existed in some level. How organized they were, I don't know. Stories are they met in woods, they did good deeds and bad things, good and bad and good and bad. Whether they actually ever confronted Patrick McGuire or vice versa, that's fiction in the play.
That's great. And so when you were first writing it in 1980, I mean that's 12 years before we actually did it out here for the first time, did you think of it as an indoor production, or did you, when was the imagining of doing it outside here at your family's sort of home?
Well, it took me a long time to move from research to the script, so I didn't know what I wanted for years. But then when I finally started to think of doing it, I did want to do it here. I'd done a show in Edmonton. My mom passed away in 1990 and I inherited the farm. That's probably why I could even think of doing it anyway. But I got back from the show in Edmonton in 1991 and I looked in the fields and I saw the scenes in my mind's eye. And I thought, I want to do it here. Then when I started to workshop the play, most of the people I worked with felt, oh, that's crazy. It'll have to be an indoor show of some kind. So that was kind of like I was kind of pushed and pulled through the period there for a while. And then the man who co-founded the company with me, Jerome Ackers, I showed him the script, and I guess I expressed my feeling of doing it on this farm, and he thought that was a good idea.
Yeah.
So as so many things in life, you need, maybe you need a person or persons to give you a little vote of confidence.
Yeah, for sure. And but the script wasn't completely done, because I remember workshopping some of those second act Catholic scenes.
All the swearing in the first scene of the second act was supplied by actors improvising the lines. So
don't write Robert anything else 20, 30 years later.
We did it. I remember that. We wanted to give a face to that Catholic community who was coming into the play, and so we had a number of actors workshopping that scene when they first arrived.
Yes, I workshopped some of the lines.
Yeah,
I played Colleen McCarty. No, I remember. But you grew up not thinking there were any Catholics here in this Protestant enclave that is Cavan Monaghan. But now
I thought that there were a couple. I heard of the Redmonds, and I heard of a couple of families, but that was it.
But that's not true, in fact, right?
Now, when I started looking at the archives and seeing who first settled here in 1819, 1820, there were dozens of Catholic families. They were still outnumbered 10-1 by the Protestants, who were mostly Irish, but that community that was here, that memory had gotten erased over almost 200 years.
And erased, I guess, because the Protestants were sort of in charge.
Yeah, that's the old saying, the victors write the history, and it's funny, in Ireland they say there's not really many Protestant historical societies because they don't really want to look at the past, but the Catholics are all the historical societies are Catholic.
Fair enough, fair enough. And it's so interesting to me because, am I right in saying this, and I don't think I'm disclosing anything, like you were really hepped up as a young person to get the heck out of here, right? And get away from the isolation of this community. Is that true?
Oh yeah, I mean, my dad and I, we were sort of similar in some ways, so we had, a little bit. But I did.
Such a nice way of saying things like that.
But yeah, certainly when I was 17, I did not really want to stay.
And so you went off, and I mean, you went to university, and then you went out west, and you had quite a distinguished acting career, and then you had the property. I'm so curious, though, what it is about this place now, 32 more years on, that you have stayed in this and really captured the stories and heart and soul of this community in such a profound way, for a guy who wanted to leave so badly when he was 17.
Yes, that's a good question. I don't know if I can answer that.
Okay.
But I certainly am happy to have done the amount of research I have and continue to do. I do find the community history incredibly interesting.
Yeah, and I don't think, some people have said to me over the years, why is it so amazing, the history of that place, of Millbrook and Cavan? But I say to people all the time, if you sat down with the elders of any community, and every community probably has as interesting of stories.
Yeah.
What is your writing process like,
I see my writing colleague Ian McLaughlin over there, and Ian's even been so kind to be dragged into learning about this community as well. We've written 7 plays together, most of which are about this general area in some way, shape or form.
And Ian's originally from Scotland.
Yeah.
And came to Peterborough years and years ago. What is your writing process like in terms of do you do months, years of research and then bang out a script, or is it a bit of both mixed together? Can you tell me a bit about that?
It's kind of a bit of both, but it depends on, like, I know with working with Ian, collaborating, we do a certain amount of research and then write a bit of research. If I'm working on my own, I tend to do a lot of research and then bang something out and then want to get that thing put on. So often that's the hardest part of it,
the long lead times.
The long lead times.
Yeah.
And the whole point of writing a play is to have it produced. So if it's not produced, then it doesn't. It's hard to move on. Like it's all part of the same thing. You're researching it, you're writing it, and you think of an audience, and it's all kind of the same thing. So you're in this world of that, and that's why it's great co-writing, because you're not just alone on it. So you have a partner, but it is very much you're living your own world. See, there you go, only child, walked around, imagination, living in your own head. So I know I'm an odd person in some ways.
But no, that makes sense, because you have all those characters in your head, and I think writers are a lot of writers are like that. I love the
characters. Like when I'm in this play, even though I'm acting in it, because I've written it, I have so much empathy for some of the characters, and I feel like sometimes I just want to I want to express that empathy, even if it's not appropriate. Because, oh, McGuire, poor McGuire, what's happening to you? Or Swain, why are you doing? Like, it's you take it very personally.
You have played a number of characters in this play, or is it, wait,
Yeah.
3? And then I said a number and then I realized I could be wrong. So you've played, we couldn't find anyone else to play the priest in the first year. We tried, people kept quitting.
I played the priest the first year. I played McGuire once, right?
Yeah.
And I directed it 5 times, and you directed it once, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the first time that the whole weight of the thing hasn't really been on my shoulders.
What's that like?
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a play to try to direct. It really is.
Yes, it is. Yes.
And the part of McGuire is a hell of a part to act.
It is. I mean, when you think about sort of archetypes of stories, this is the hero's journey, right, McGuire? And you've given him. I mean, it's for an actor, it's an extraordinary gift. This character of Patrick McGuire, but it is the lion's share on his shoulders in lots of ways.
Yeah. So I think
don't tell anyone else. None of the other actors that
as playing Knowlson, Justice Knowlson, his helpmate. Maybe that's partly why we have a good relationship in the play, because I want so much to help Patrick McGuire, the character in the play and the person. So.
Yeah. And so, do you sort of? I mean, you've been in rehearsals. What is it like to sit there and watch it all unfold? Oh my Lord. Okay. Is it tough because actors struggle with lines to a certain point, right? And we also have this. Which is a weird thing even probably for any other playwright. We have this 31-year relationship with this play. I mean, I probably could do the one-woman show of this play, which is really weird. So I knew from day one when they were getting the lines wrong.
Yeah. And it's archaic language. And the language of the Blazers is very specific, and there's lots of I's and Th's and ye's. And McGuire has a different way of speaking as well. So it's not the easiest thing for an actor at this time to absorb.
Yeah. I mean, they're doing a great job with it. It's amazing what they're doing with it, but it must have been interesting in the process.
Well, it's weird. If you're in a scene with the character you've played, then that character's speaking, but you have to not start mouthing the words yourself. And maybe I'm doing that. I don't think I am.
You're not. I would tell you. No, I'd tell you. I would have told you a long time ago.
Sometimes I think I'm on the verge.
No. I'm curious, do you have a place in your house or somewhere on your property that you write, and a time of day you write, and do you write on computer or by hand? Can you share some of those things with us about you?
I think I like to, I always thought I liked to write by hand, but now I think I can write in the computer the same as by hand. I like to write in the mornings. Figure by 1 o'clock there's nothing new in the head, so it's just kind of a waste. And I like to research in the mornings, but maybe that's getting older too. It's I
think that's why
in Florida energy kind of.
Yeah, I think that's why in Florida people eat dinner at 4:30 at night because they're all in bed by 8 o'clock. That's what I feel like more and more. I'm in bed by 8 o'clock.
When I was writing the Blazers, I don't know if I do it so much now, but I would actually get up and walk around, like that scene, I'm in business is business. I remember writing that in our dining room in the house, probably where my mom had her piano and her parties and stuff. And I would just walk around as the characters talking to each other.
Yeah.
Like, big time.
It's amazing. And so now, what have you got brewing right now for plays? Can you share anything with us?
As you know, I've been working on a play for about 3 or 4 years about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And it's such an absorbing topic, and it's such a difficult topic. And I've learned so much about a culture other than mine, and a time other than mine. So that's, when you write plays about history, you go into a world, or you try to go into a world to the best of your ability. And sometimes that world you go into isn't the most comfortable place to be, and not always everybody wants to know about certain things in history, right? But that topic, I learned about an uprising in a death camp in 1943 that I'd never heard about, and I was just so amazed by the courage of the people. I started researching this topic, which is now gone. So that's one. This fall, we're hoping to have a reminiscence to.
Well, we are going to have one.
Yes, good. I went to Millbrook High School, which existed from about 1960 to 1982 or 3. And
wait, and is it the elementary school now, or
it's the
administrative building?
It's that long, low building in Millbrook.
Right in downtown.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I thought it would be interesting to talk to former students and teachers. Well, we're still here to maybe do a play about that.
Yeah, I think it'd be great because there's more people like you, I think, who wanted to get away so badly from the isolation of this kind of a community, but then maybe have found themselves coming back.
Now they're all coming back to communities.
I know, for something simpler or roots or those things, right?
And Ian McLaughlin and I were working on a new we've written
The five.
Dr.
This is
Bernardo's
number five.
Children,
Four?
Wounded Soldiers,
Carmel.
Carmel,
This is
Eleanor.
number five.
This is the 5th play about Bernardo children.
Yeah.
So this play is going to be set in a long-term care facility with the kids from the first play in that facility. So we're starting to interview people that work in long-term care and people that are residents to work on that project.
We started with the play about little kids, and then
Yeah.
a play about them in their the 20s, early 20s, and then into their 40s, and then Eleanor, he's in his 50s or 60s, and now I see a trajectory here
Yeah.
of the lives of Bernardo children and you and Ian.
It's tentatively called The End.
No, it is not, is
Yes,
it?
it is.
Oh my stars. Well, I love the idea of Millbrook Play. I don't know if it'll end up being called Millbrook High. That's what we're just calling it right now. I think it should have an exclamation point because of the period of time when you went to Millbrook High.
Yeah, that culture, the drug culture was just starting. I mean, it had been many places earlier than that, but it was just starting to Millbrook was starting to see the effects of that. 68, 69, somewhere in there.
Yeah, the stories are a little bit legendary. The snowmobiling and the driving pickup trucks with
It
no
wasn't
lights
so much
on.
drugs and snowmobiling, it was pretty much alcohol.
Oh, was it? Okay. Is it you that broke your arm? Wait, who hit you?
No, I was snowmobiling I had broken my leg, and I was snowmobiling with a cast on. I'd broken my leg on the snowmobile, but I was snowmobiling with a cast on, and my neighbor Alan Elger, I collided with his machine and broke his leg, and then we both had broken legs.
It was the 60s, everyone, or the early 70s. Rob, I know you've got a bike home in a couple minutes. Is there anything else you think we should know about the show tonight?
I'm just really happy that it's happening again. When it was first created all those years ago and researched, the idea was to do this play, and that would be it. And here we are, 30-some years, and the company's still around, and that's good.
I know, it's so crazy. And the other thing I wanted to say was, you were responding in the early 90s as well to the Yugoslavian war while you were writing this too. And I think now it's so interesting that it feels very prescient around what's going on in Ukraine and other sort of displaced peoples and diasporas and conflicts around the world. Yes.
Yeah, people still don't get along, so yeah.
Yeah, and neighbors who share a country and a culture, who see each other as so othered.
Yeah, that part of the world, Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania,
Yep.
what's gone on there since, before the Second World War, it's just unbelievable what that part of the world has gone through.
Yeah, what those people have experienced, for sure. Well, thank you so much for taking time with me after a crazy opening night and now a beautiful night to see theater. And I know you've got lots to do in the show, but would you all join me in thanking Robert for spending some time with me?